Hey everyone, Matt from Strong Personal Training here, and today we're going through some programming concepts for early intermediates progressing into actual intermediate programming. So as you start with beginner programming, super linear periodization, we get your sets and reps stay largely the same, and your goal is basically just add weight at each workout and that load on the bar just goes up. Really simple, works really well when you're just getting into the sport, but as you get stronger with powerlifting, you're able to inflict more stress on the system, which is your body. And you need to, as a result, periodize around that and account for more recovery in your program and allow for there to be more wave structure, which allows you to keep progressing in your program. So we're going to go through two different models today. First is what I'd consider an early intermediate program, and second is an actual intermediate program. Now, this isn't really going to spell out which lifts you should be doing on which days and how you should organize your training week. Instead, it's going to outline a periodization structure for any given lift. So you could use this for your squat, your bench press, your deadlift. If you're coming off a beginner program like something like strong lifts or starting strength, even more intermediate programs like Mad Cow, this would still work pretty well. And I use this style with some of my early intermediate lifters as well. So tried and tested, it works pretty well. So we're gonna go through the +4 -1 structure. Not a very sexy name, but very to the point with what we're getting at here. So for every 4 weeks of progression that you have, you go back by 1 week, and then you start your next 4 weeks of progression where your third week would be. So let's go through an example here. So we've got your sets and reps for your lift, just as an arbitrary example. We set them at 5 reps and 5 sets for your weekly workout that you're doing, right? This could be every second workout that you're doing, and you might have a separate day. We'll get into those in another video. But let's say we're doing 5 sets of 5 reps pretty much across the whole program to keep things constant. And we're going to look at your percentage of your 1 rep max that you're working with. Now, your first 4 weeks of your program, or your first 4 sessions, again, depending on how you're organizing it, are going to be starting at like 70%, which is a pretty common percentage to start out with a 5x5 program. From there, you'd add 2.5% a week. So you go 70, 72.5, 75, up to 77.5% on week 4. Now there, you're probably starting to get into some heavier territory, starting to feel more challenging. You're going to take 1 step back. So now your week 5, which is week 1 of your new block, is going to start you out at 75%. And then you go 77.5, 80, and then 82.5. Right? And that takes you through your second block of 4 weeks of training. Then your week 1 of your third block, week 9, you'd start out at 80%, then go 82.5, 85, and 87.5. And you can see how even over the course of 3 months, we've gone and taken this program from 70% of your 1 rep max, which probably isn't a PR for 5s, and we've taken you all the way up to 87.5. And you can probably get even a few more months of progress out of this, especially if you're smart with your lift selections as well. But you're basically taking yourself and you're going up 4 steps, back a step, and then up 4 more steps, back a step. And it allows for just enough recovery where you basically end up with, for every 4 weeks of training, 2 weeks of training that you've already done, so to speak. So you can see kind of build up to 77.5%, and then these 2 weeks are actually repeat performances. And then the same with this 80 and 82.5% week. So you're really only pushing 2 weeks out of every 4, which allows for that recovery. And when I say pushing in the context of this program, I'm talking about really just breaking PRs. So the second periodization structure we get into, and this is really just the natural progression of the +4 -1 structure, is the +4 -2 structure. So at a certain point, this +4 -1 structure is going to stop working for you, and you're going to find that your lifts have leveled off. You're really kind of grinding yourself to a pulp, kind of like you did when you got to the end of your beginner program, when you grew out of starting strength or strong lifts or whichever other basic linear periodization program you were using. So it's time to build a little bit more recovery into the program and allow your body to play a little bit more catch up and spend a little bit less time with your foot on the gas. So you can probably already see where this is going, but we'll go over our percentage and stuff as well anyway. So again, we'll say our sets and reps stay at 5x5 because we're not going to really worry too much at this stage in your training about manipulating your sets and reps. I think just, in my opinion, a general strength training setup with some good accessory lift selection to help keep everything well-rounded and stop you from developing a lot of muscular imbalances is going to be your best bet for training. And really getting most of your variation just through intensity manipulations and not worrying too much about rep changes. So our first 4 weeks look the same, but instead of going back 1 week, we go back 2. So now we start at 72.5, then we go to 75, 77.5, and then 80, right? So you can see here, instead of having just the 2 weeks of training which repeat each other, so what would have been this instead is actually now 3 weeks of training. And so you have 3 weeks of non-PRs for every week of PRs that you're hitting. And so then after that first 8 weeks, you'd follow that up with starting back 2 weeks earlier. So you're going 75, 77.5, 80, and then 82.5. And in a nutshell, that's all we're really doing. Again, you get 3 weeks of build up to each PR here. And this second periodization structure, the +4 -2, is really, really useful. You get a lot of longevity out of it just because of how much recovery is built into the program. In terms of using this in your own program, this would be something where if you're familiar with something like a Mad Cow program or Texas Method, this is the structure you'd be using on your more intensity focused days, where the goal is really pushing, and then you would just build in your recovery days, your lighter squat session or bench session or deadlift session or whatever you're doing around that on your second or your third days. But this is really your kind of main heavy day that you're pushing. This is the kind of structure that you want to be working on, is this idea of trying to push as much as you can while building however much recovery you need into the program in order to still progress. So there you have it. 2 super simple introductions to how to build your own program and writing your intensities without getting into the weeds too much about, which bands should you be using in your squat or how do you undulate periodization. Just nice and simple. +4 -1 if you're just getting out of that beginner phase. If you're a little bit more advanced or you've stalled out on that +4 -1, go for +4 -2. 3 weeks of build up to every PR instead of 2. That's it. Thanks. See you guys next week.